Well, at the end of part 2, I said I'd pick up right where I left off. Turns out I won't be. I started filming it, started dry brushing these tracks, and one of them broke. So I had to set it back on the model and re-glue it. And right now I'm not real happy with the tracks. I tend to personify parts, and so we've had some discussion vis-a-vis about both of our goals in this project, and I made it very clear that my goals take priority over their goals, so we're still talking that out. So I think while that glue dries, I'm going to go do something else. And yes, I know I sound quite insane, but I'm really not happy right now. Now, what I am going to do right now is on this part of the gun that I've painted I based it in the Castellan green. I'm going to dry brush with some Lauren Forest. It's not going to be a high contrast look, but I'm doing this less for the dry brush effect and more for some tonal variation, maybe a slightly modulated look. So that's what I'm going to be going for with this, just using this cheap makeup brush. Now I'll go in initially like I'm dry brushing, heading for the edges and things like that. And you can see there's a little bit of contrast there, which is fine. That's okay. But what I want to do is, like on these upper areas, I'm going to be a little more aggressive with the color application, just so that, again, this is, I would not call this, I would not be so bold as to call this modulation, but rather it's just introducing some highlight in a very rough way using this same brush that you would use for dry brushing. Now the reason I'm doing this now is these other parts I'm going to paint with silver colors, probably base it in lead belcher. So I need to get this dry brushing done before I can move on to that, because that would certainly turn out quite messy, I think, if I tried to do this over that, because you can see you may not be able to see, but I'm getting some of that green on there, and that's eventually going to be lead belcher. So let me get this done. All right, you can see how that looks, and like if you look at it from the bottom, hopefully you can see how dark that green is. But then as you start bringing it around, by the time you get to the top, you get that lighter Lauren green look. Now, if you look really close, you can see a little bit of graininess from the dry brushing. I'm okay with that. I think dry brushing is a legit technique. No, does that graininess, does that look absolutely realistic? Is that a perfect blend? No, but I'm not one of those that says a model has to look absolutely realistic. In my mind, it's still a toy. So I'm okay with a toy-like appearance. I like this appearance. I'm one of those that sees modeling as art, and there's all sorts of art. There's realism and there's impressionism. There's all sorts of things. So anyway, I like the way that looks. So just some low contrast stuff to bring out a little bit of the detail and things like that. And now I can start painting the silver on here. All right, I've got some lead belcher thinned, not heavily with water, but enough that it's very flowy, and it's going to take a couple of coats. And I'm just going to use this great big brush to get the areas away from the green, and just to speed up that process. And then once I get up to where I'm painting up around the green areas, I'll switch to a smaller brush. But no point in showing me painting something silver, because there ain't nothing special about it. Just get it painted. All right, I'm going to get back to the tracks. I'm using this German camo black-brown. I'm just dry brushing this with one of my fluffy makeup brushes. And nothing special about this step. I can't remember if I've already mentioned this, so I'll go ahead and mention it again. I'm essentially following the pattern that Martin Kovach on night shift scale models, demonstrated with his 72nd scale trumpeter Char Bis B1 or 1B or Bis Char or Char B or whatever, the little French tank. I really liked the way he did those tracks. I thought it was for something like this, a simpler method to replicate. And so I'm going to be following not precisely that pattern, but mostly that pattern. All right, this is a 50-50 mix of Citadel's Agrax Earthshade and their Lamian Medium, which is basically just paint medium without any pigment in it. So it essentially thins it down. And then I put in a drop of Liquitex Flow Improver to that, because what I wanted was something that would accentuate the shadows, define the details, but would not be so heavy that it would completely tint everything to a darker color. So it'll let some of that lighter paint, the base paint, shine through. It'll let some of the dry brushing shine through, but it will define the edges and the details and things like that, and get me further down the road for how I want the tracks to look. Now, while the tracks are drying, I'm going to paint this gun cover here in Citadel's Rhinox hide. The reason I'm not just leaving it that primer color is if I have to go back and make some adjustments later, I won't have to try and match the primer color. I'll already know what color paint this is. I like making these leather looking. You can make them canvas looking. You can make them whatever you want. I just think it's fun to paint leather, so I'm going to start with just a base of Rhinox hide like that. I've added some Doom Bull Brown to that mix, and I've thinned it down with water. And what I want to do is just begin adding some texture, not necessarily in any of the patterns that are already present in the sculpt, but just some tonal variation across the whole thing. I've thinned the paint down with water more than it was before. It's certainly not a wash, but you can see it's fairly transparent, and this allows me to just build the color up as I want. And what I'm generally doing is I'm putting more color towards the top than I am at the bottom, so that there will be just the introduction of a gradient. This is going to be really subtle, but it's the foundation for the other colors that are to come. Like I said, it's mainly just to introduce some texture. All right, I'm going to continue that I was doing before, but this time with just pure Doom Bull Brown. And this time I am going to avoid, like you see that crease right there, I'm going to avoid getting any paint in that so that that remains darker. And then I'm going to focus my stippling from about halfway up and not go down to that lower area right there. But again, this is just stippling. No pattern, no expected rhyme or reason, just eyeballing it until I get it like I want. And then on the top, I'll stipple it pretty much fully to brighten that up, because obviously, because of the light, this would be a brighter, more reflective, well, not more reflective, but it would have more light hitting it. So I want to make sure to get this completely covered up here with the stippling. And by completely covered, I don't mean a solid paint job, but covered enough that it's lighter, but still leaving some texture. All right, you can probably guess what this step is. This is going to be Doom Bull Brown and Tuscarora Fur mixed together. And it's just going to be adding more stippled highlights. And this is where I'm really going to start thinking about forming the shapes, not just texture, but really accentuating the shapes. So getting around that crease, getting here along this edge, starting to brighten that up a little further down. I'm not going to stipple, but maybe a quarter of the way up. But along this edge here, and I may have to do this off camera so I can actually see what I'm doing. But I'm going to get that edge there and any other edges and like along up here so that it just presents more and more of a gradient moving up to lighter colors that would be more in light to try and give it shape and depth and life and all of those things. All right, this is just pure Tuscarora fur. And what I'm going to do is just try and brighten up these edges more towards the top. And then stipple on there where there's a sharper transition in the shape. And then right along those creases. And I'm also going to add just some little micro scratches. I started doing that with the last mix, but just some little micro scratches. You often see that in leather. But just trying to brighten up those edges. And then on the top, I'll really give it more brightness in some areas. Mostly right here in the middle. Just so there will be some difference. And then brighten up that edge right there like that. I think it was Sam Lenz that I heard say, whenever you think you've added your final highlight, add one more. So I'm going to try that theory out. Hope I don't mess it up. I added just a little bit of Vallejo buff to the mix to lighten it up even more. See if I can get away with this. Well, I'm certainly no Sam Lenz, so I'm going to stop there, but you can see the texture that's on there. Now, up close like this, you know, and I don't say this as an excuse for my lack of painting skills with details like this, but it really is the case that, you know, a lot of times zoom in on some, I've been surprised, things that look very smooth, when you zoom in on them, you see the textures and the stippling and all of the things that go into it. Because if I zoom out here, let me just pull it back. All right, here you can see, you know, this is from the camera to the part is maybe 10 inches, maybe not that much, but you see it looks a little different. So I count on that because my painting is not really that good. So I count on average viewing distance. Well, you know, your stuff doesn't look all that good. Well, you're not looking at it at average viewing distance. Well, of course it's not going to look good. It's not designed to. It's not the way I express myself as an artist. Whatever helps you sleep at night, right? But you can see I can bring it up close. And if the camera will focus, you can see though, if I bring it up close like this, you see how it looks there. And then as I just move it away, it kind of melds together. Now, there are plenty of really accomplished painters who can make all of this work even up here, you know. So maybe one day I'll get there. Maybe. We'll see. Well, it looks like I've come up on my self-imposed time limit of keeping it under 15 minutes. And this will work because I think I just said, I thought it. We're going to actually be leaving. Today's December 19th. We're going to be leaving tomorrow to go on our vacation, driving out to Oklahoma City. 18 hours, 2 days we're renting a van. And then we'll come back on the 31st. That'll be a 22-hour drive. So we got plenty of driving ahead of us. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up so I can get it rendered and loaded up so it'll be ready to go in the new year, and I won't come back and be having to scramble to do another episode. So got some work done on the tracks, got some work done on the big shooty gun, got some work done on this leather here. So I will continue, and we'll just keep narrowing down the details. I don't know why I said we, because I'm going to be the one painting, you're going to be the one watching, but we're in this together, right? We're all in this together. Whatever. I've had some coffee this morning. So I'll call this a video, and I'll pick it up in part 4. And as always, thank you so much for being a patron. You're the ones who make this possible, and all the stuff that I do on YouTube. It's not lost on me. I've got a few thousand subscribers, and a few hundred people watch the videos. And while certainly the YouTube ads help us finance what I do, I'm not going to discount them at all. It's the Patreon support that makes it possible. So thank you very much for carrying the load for me, for my family, and for everybody else who's watching. I really appreciate it. So with all that being said, you know, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Happy day to you. Bye-bye.